Okay, so now that we've got all of our shapes pasted in on separate layers, I'm going to show you all how to resize them and set them on the proper mode, position them around your image before we start actually adding color and value to these shapes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this tool here, which is a crosshair, and it's going to grab individual layers as you select them and move them around. So we're going to start with this first layer here, and as you can see it's the cone, so I'm going to drag it up here to the top left corner. Then I'm going to go to the next layer, which is the sphere. I'm going to drag it up here. Then I'm going to go down here to the cube, and I'm going to drag it here. And then I'm going to go to the cylinder, and I'm going to drag it over here. Now these shapes all came in fairly small, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to resize them. So I'm going to start with the cone again, and I'm going to use this tool right here, which is the Resize tool. Now I'm going to hold down Shift, which should be on your tablet hotkeys, and I'm going to make this larger to fill the space a little bit better. Once you're finished sizing it, dragging it from the corner and hold down Shift, you're just going to hit Enter to make that finalize. And then we're going to do the same thing here with the cube, or with the sphere rather. We're going to resize it. I'm going to drag it from the left corner because it's already kind of right oriented, so holding down Shift, I'm just going to drag that and make that bigger. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the cube because it is teeny tiny. Shift, make it bigger, and you can actually use this to reposition as well. This tool will reposition as well as size. And then you just hit Enter, and the cylinder finally. Shift, drag, more bigger. Now for the value scale, I'm actually going to want to rotate this, so I'm going to come back down to this first paint layer because that's where the value scale is. Something else you can do is you can rename your layer by double clicking it and then typing in what it is. So for this sake, we're going to type in value scale and drawing, because that's what it is. It's the drawing of the value scale. It's going to be important later. So I use the this tool here, and it will actually rotate as well as resize. So I'm going to just rotate that this way, and then just holding down Shift, I'm going to size it up a bit and just kind of see how it fits. It fits pretty good, and that's a decent size for that. So the first bit of this demonstration is going to be to show you how to combine all your layers, set them to the proper property, and then we'll begin adding some color and value, and then I'll speed up the process for the rest of the parts here. So first thing we're going to do is just turn all of these on. We're going to take and combine all the layers. So we're going to click the top layer, we're going to hold down Shift and click all the way down here to the value scale, and then we're just going to right click and tell it to merge with the layer below. And so now it's all merged together. We're actually going to rename this to drawing layer, and this will help later when you're working on your character studies and things like that. So we've got this as a drawing layer. Now for the sake of this demo, we're going to be drawing underneath the drawing layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it from normal to multiply. Now what multiply does is it means that if I take my brush tool after setting it on multiply and I have a layer underneath here, and I stroke in color, see, now we can still see our line work, and we're coloring underneath the drawing layer. As you can see, think of each layer as a separate level of transparency. So what we're going to do first is we're going to fill in the shapes. So we're going to start a layer, and we're just going to call it flat colors. And then once we've done that, we are going to come back and start filling in some color. So we're going to zoom in on our shapes. I'm going to go with middle green, like that. And I'm just going to select, this flat brush is actually pretty good for this process. So I'm just going to fill it in. And as you can see, I'm not really going over my lines because I'm on a layer below and they're set to transparent. They're set to multiply, so there's some transparency there. And you see I got a little bit of a boo-boo there, so I'm going to come in here with the eraser tool and just kind of get rid of that edge and swap back. And all I did was click the eraser button up here on the top to do that. And get a little boo-boo, erase that. Alright, so I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to speed up the rest of these for the shaded shapes portion. Okay, so as you can see, I have all my flat shapes done in here now, and I've got them all saved on their own layer, which is great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 2 more layers really quickly here, 1, 2, and I'm going to rename these layers by double-clicking the layer with my pen, and name this one Shadows, and I'm going to name this one Highlight. You can use abbreviations if you want, if it makes it go quicker for you, but having your layers named definitely helps because you won't get lost, and it'll help you keep layer order. So flat color should be on the bottom, right up above the background. Your drawing layer should be on top, and your highlights and shadows are going to be in between. So the reason that we do flat colors on a whole other layer is so we can get a nice clean selection and not go outside of our lines when we're doing our shading. So I'm going to actually switch brushes. I really like this glaze brush for laying in shadows because it's transparent and has some nice qualities to it. You know, as you can see, I can change my brush sizes. So I'm going to start with shadows because that's going to feel the most natural. But the first thing I'm going to do is I want to select the shape to make sure that I haven't I won't go outside my lines. And in order to make sure I don't work on my flat color layer accidentally, I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer, and I'm going to lock the drawing layer so I don't work on that layer accidentally. And you know what, while I'm at it, I'm just going to go ahead and lock the highlight layer too, just, you know, because it'll make sure that I don't get lost. If you look at the shadow layer here, I can mark on the shadow layer, you know, as you can see. Let's get a darker green here. So I can mark on the shadow layer all I want. But if I go over here and try to mark on a layer that I've locked, see, it looks like Ghostbusters. Okay, so that's helpful. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the flat color layer, and I'm going to use this tool here, which is the Magic Wand tool. Now the Magic Wand tool will select everything that is a similar value. So as you can see, I've got a selection going. That means that when I start shading, I'm not going to go outside my lines. So I'm going to go back to my shadow layer here, and I'm going to zoom in a bit on this cone. And I will show you the process of shading and highlighting this particular cone in slow motion, and then I will move on to the other shapes, but I'll do them sped up so you can see what that looks like. All right, so basically I'm going to start by putting in the dark shadow on the side here, thinking that this first part is going to be my highlight, the part on the right. I'm just kind of dragging my brush all down the surface so I can get a nice heavy shadow on the one side here. And because it's selected, I'm not going outside the lines. So now I'm going to use my picker and I'm going to select an even darker shade of green, almost a black, and I'm going to come in here and put the core of the shadow in, and I'm just going to use pressure to blend this out. Now if you want to, you can use, there are some tools that you can smudge values with. If we look on our paint section here, any tool that has like purple is basically going to be a smudge tool and not actually apply any more color. So if we look at this, I'm just basically smudging this out, and it's not actually applying any more color, it's just kind of blending it. A lot of people really like the I guess it's a cotton swab here. They use that for blending because that feels that kind of natural to them. Alright, so from here I'm going to lay in my highlights. So I'm going to lock my shadow layer, I'm going to go to my highlight layer, unlock it, and then actually select it to get on it. And I'm going to go back to that glaze brush that I like. And you can use any brush you want. You can kind of experiment around and try different brushes out and find something that you enjoy. And so now I'm going to start laying in the highlight. Now if you look at it, see the highlight's running right over the shadow. And that's okay because we're on a whole other layer, so it's not actually going to mix with the shadow that's there on the surface. So I'm just going to lay in this highlight here, and I kind of goofed, so I'm just going to undo. Yeah, there we go. So I got the bright highlight on the side of the cone, and I'm kind of working my way over towards the center now. The other great thing about having highlights and shadows on different layers is you can use the eraser tool to kind of blend as well. I'm just kind of taking some of that extreme value out and putting some in more here on the side. Any brush can be converted to the eraser tool by clicking this button. Alright, so now that we see how to shade a basic cone, I am going to go ahead and shade the rest of these shapes in. It'll be sped up, but I'll put captions in to tell you what to do. Okay, for the final step of this project, what you're going to do is you are going to make 3 different value scales using 3 different tools of your choice, just to kind of get the feel for different mark making tools. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with dark and we're going to work our way towards light. Now if you see I'm working on the shadow layer, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up to the drawing layer first, and I'm going to use the magic wand tool to select my first box. Now I'm going to go down to my shadow layer, and this is why having your drawing layer locked will be handy, because if you accidentally start working on this, it's not going to let you once you select a tool. So first tool I selected is this kind of flat brush, just because that's another one I like. There's a lot of different brushes you can use, so it's always good to kind of try out different things. So I'm going to go back to the shadow layer, and then I'm going to start I'm going to select black, And this is going to be where the pressure sensitivity of the tablet really comes in handy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in this first block, just straight black, pressing as hard as I can within reason. I'm not, pressing to try and put a hole through the screen, but, I'm pressing fairly hard. So then I'm going to come back to the drawing layer. Once again, using our selection tool, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to deselect first, and then I'm going to select the next area. Going back to the shadow layer, now I'm going to use a little bit less pressure to basically make a gray. Now if you guys look, this is a fairly light gray, so I'm just going to kind of keep overlapping with this tool, just like you would shade a regular value scale on a piece of paper. So using more and more pressure until I get a good stair step down from black, but still fairly gray. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing, drawing layer, and I'm going to use my quick select tool, deselect my area, select the next area, go back down to the shadow, select my brush again, and I'm going to start light and work my way to dark. So fill this in. Alright. Okay. So that's a nice stair step down. It's okay that it's streaky. I mean, this is kind of designed to look like a drawing anyway, so I'm okay with that. So rinse and repeat. Nice thing is this will give you good practice with swapping tools and layers. Alright, so next one. Now I'm using very, very light pressure to create a very, very light gray. Kind of a middle gray. Once again, you move right outside the lines, and it's only going to work inside the selected area. Deselect, drawing layer, magic wand, select, shadows, tool, or brush. Now at this point, I'm actually going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go up from gray, or I'm going to drag this thing up from black into a lighter gray, so that way I can use light pressure and get an even lighter gray. Those look kind of similar. Alright, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and deselect and come in here and just darken this a little bit. You gotta be a little bit more careful because I don't have my thing selected anymore. And if I want to, I can come back to my drawing layer and reselect that. So just moving right along here, I'm going to magic wand again. I'm on my drawing layer, boop, selected, and go back to my shadow layer, grab my brush again, and just use even lighter pressure, more white showing through. If you wanted to, you could come back and blend this with that, Q-tip tool. And deselect, and then come back up to the drawing layer. And my final one, because I don't have to put anything in the white square, obviously. I'm going to select that again, go back to my shadow layer, get my brush again, use even less pressure. I'm actually going to zoom in to give me a little bit more control. Just like that. Alright, so there we have a nice little value scale from dark to light. Let's just deselect it to see how it looks. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And so basically you're going to use that same method, and you're going to try out a couple of different paintbrush tools. You can actually go into the sketch thing and find some different pencils and things that you want to try out, but the idea is going from dark to light all the way across, and they should match top to bottom. So if this is black, this should be black. If this is a lighter gray, this should be the same gray. Okay, so that's how that's going to look.